health is physical wealth.
Hello. I'm back. I just did the special for anybody who was like, oh, she just left. It's not even so if you were there for the special, I really appreciate it. Hopefully you'll stay for the show as well. But I had to do this special because I have to give credit and honor to where credit and honor is due. And I did a Facebook. I haven't been able to get on Facebook, but I did a Facebook special video. Again, giving honor to and respect to where it's due. So that's just what I do from time to time. Bear with me, because I have to let it be known all the time. I'm doing it in my everyday, but I don't remember, on this show. So I'm like, that's not like me. You have to know me to know it. So I had to go ahead and do that. But today is December 18th. 2023, and tomorrow is my son's birthday. Yay, one of them anyway. So, and again, pardon me with the camera thing, because the camera is just, it always throws me off. I'm like, I'm not a camera person. I'm just not. I don't do a whole lot of attention. I like to support those who do, though. You want to be in the front of the camera, I support you, and I tell you tips and hints and helpful information that may help you improve, or whatever it is you're looking for. But anyway, today's episode is about the World Wide Web and adroit discoveries. What are adroit discoveries? We live life clever, witty, skillful with our hands. So we also have some discoveries that come along with that we weren't really looking for. We weren't, looking for that. It's like a phenomenon. You working and you focused on a particular goal, but while you focus on that goal, something else happens, and it's like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that reaction, but it happened, and it happened out of the blue, and you're like, well, man, that's awesome. And a lot of scientists call that a phenomenon, something that we wasn't really trying for, but it happened. Hey, Daddy Lee and Mama Charlotte. Thank you. I hope you caught that special. Now, in the special, I was talking about how I used military funds for military spouses to get my education. And I like I said, it didn't pay for my education, but the funds were helpful. And more importantly, the advocacy was helpful, because a lot of times you advocating for yourself, you finding all these adroit discoveries, information that you wasn't necessarily looking for, but you found. And I found some information and I recorded it. It just so happened it was a blessing that I had recorded, because I record everything that has anything to do with my education, because I need to refer to it exactly, as opposed to recalling and recounting it and twisting it in my memory. Because as a psychologist, I understand the human mind and behavior, and we do that. We twist some things, and we're like, man, I thought I remembered it accurately, but we come to find we did not. And via our interpretation from what you actually said, what came out your mouth, and what we actually received and heard, because our feelings, or because we're not really into the moment of hearing the information and receiving the information properly. So it's a whole lot of things to play into it, which is why I always tell my clients, get a dictaphone, get some SD cards, get some other devices that are offline, and record. You can use your cell phone or an old cell phone that's offline, and you can use that phone to record, because it still has the SD card and it still has the video footage capability. And you can always store that camera in a place where nobody can see it, but you can see that it's being recorded. Now, I'm not always, I live with a bunch of men. So living with a bunch of men, they not as tidy as I am. So sometimes that camera might catch some things. Some of the guys, I'm the only one that's a female, so somebody might be walking around in their boxers or something. Camera gonna catch it. I don't care. I gotta record. the dictaphone is also going to catch it. So I have two sources. And I always tell my clients, have two sources for recording, because a lot of the people that I help are students, homeschoolers, military homeschoolers, and just tutoring and things like that, on top of being an industrial organizational psychologist, where I help people who are trying to improve their lives via their business or an organization like the church organization, or an entrepreneur who is trying to, improve while they're building their staff and their practice. For example, there was a daycare and it was going out of business, and I was stationed in Virginia, and I didn't really have adequate job that would keep me busy. So I helped that organization as an industrial organizational psychologist before I even knew there was a such thing as an industrial organizational psychologist. So there's that. I wrote the business plan, the working business performer, and we saved a lot of jobs with that. But anyway, and helped a lot of children. That was a blessing, because again, we're conditioned to do a particular thing. We're conditioned to think in a particular way. If I had my box here, I'd show you in the box, out the box, Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso is like a painting that you look at and everybody's like, man, everybody sees something different. That's a lot to do with the box, because a lot of people, they see this box and they see these walls and these barriers, and they're like, man, how do we get out of this box? Well, back in the day when I was young, I used to watch these karate flicks on Samurai Sunday, and the samurai would always do these amazing tasks of jumping, and they have this incredible ability to jump, and they use the walls, their confines, in order to climb out of their confinement. It was amazing, and it made you think, oh, if I could jump that high, or if I can jump on the wall that's confining me, and bounce off this wall to that wall until I build my way up and out of the barrier, we can do some things. So it gets your mind to thinking in different ways. And yeah, at the same time, it's sci-fi. Yeah, I'm a sci-fi kid. Yeah, I grew up with sci-fi, and I even love it even more now as an adult, because it does open the mind to adroit discoveries, learning some information and seeing some things in a different way, in a new light. And it's like, wow. And it was because of my conditioning to do that, and my history of being helpful in that manner, that I was able to be blessed enough to see old studies and write it in a new way, and help to improve global human resource management practices. And it's like, if you listen to somebody limit you, I would have never did it, because I didn't have the support that I would have probably had I gone to Harvard. I'm just saying. Sometimes you go to an elite school because they already have the understanding that everything that you do, everything you succeed in, makes the institution look good. So there's the coveting thing doesn't happen as much, because they know that as a teammate, they'll excel, because they already know when you covered the information, they don't have the ability to sustain it and to grow it. So that there's that. But this thing called the World Wide Web, we talk a lot about computers and how computers were built and made and how it functions. And it was because originally computers weighed tons, like a lot. So originally IBM was the only company that could actually house such a fantastic machine. And the military was, primary the user, until IBM was like, look, we want to advance, we want to excel, we are ambitious, we have global, initiatives, meaning they have their sights on it and they're moving towards that goal as an organization that wants more than just to be a local or national business. And a lot of people in business say, a lot of the elite people say things like, if you don't have global ambitions, you got to ask yourself if you're serious. I say it in a nice way because I don't say it the way a lot of other people say it, because a lot of times in business, the people are men and they say some things really kind of blunt and kind of harsh. I know I had to do the special and then I had to do this. So, Tony, you know a lot about the World Wide Web and computers. So it's like we veered away from talking about the World Wide Web and we started talking about computers, and we made computers a household business and a household name by making it possible for students to access computers under the thought of, okay, the students, because they had to make a computer something that everybody could use, everybody wanted to use. So what they did was they found a way, and the avenue was students, because the people who were currently in business, they did not want to learn this. It was a large learning curve, and people weren't even knowing how to file in alphabetical order. Can you imagine that? Let's say each one of these documents were a file, and you had different names, and you had to stick these things in a metal file cabinet according to alphabetical order, because when the person goes to retrieve it in order to find that information again, because they gotta recount it exactly, not by what they just, I thought that's what it was. No, like for example, lawyers in a law office, they need to know, doctors' offices, they need to know the particular file and who it belongs to, so that they can recall exactly what your problem is or what's directly impacting you. So they could not figure out where these files went, because some people that they hired didn't know how to file paperwork in the alphabetical order. And even though they said they did, they didn't, and they would always misfile it. So a lot of times the records would be found, but sometimes it was just lost forever. And then you had those clever people who would take their work home with them because they thought, oh, this is my files. These are my files. I'm going to take my files with me. That's company property. But because she understood the job, the assignment, and she knew if she allowed anybody to take her filing system, they would do two things. One, mess it up and then get back, and that's on her reputation. And two, if they were able to mimic it, then she would no longer be valuable to the organization. So she had to show herself invaluable to the organization so she can maintain her job. That's just the way that was. But then computers came along. And people were like, well, I don't understand computers. I'm put all this information into this little box, and you mean to tell me this little box is going to keep all that information? So they did introduce the understanding of hardware, software, floppy disk, CD-ROMs, and things like that. But people didn't catch on to that. And because that was too technical and tech savvy type of information, it scared a lot of people off. So they didn't want to use the computer. Well, no, you too smart for me. That's too much information. And there's a learning curve. I'm out. But it was the way of the world. It was the way the world was going, especially when computers found their way into the school system. But when they expanded to the public school system, it was a done deal. It was a wrap. It was over, because once it's in the public school system, that means it's so affordable that people who cannot afford or do not afford to pay for school, even they have it. And it's like, oh, well, if you have it, then I got to have it. If I want to maintain my elite status, maintain my scholarly status, I got to have it. And there you go. So people stop dwelling on the scary part of computers, which is the World Wide Web. But we have re-entered that understanding by calling it the cloud. What am I saying? I'm saying this camera freaks me out, and I have difficulties talking in front of a camera So it does make it a little bad, but because that's what we do now. Everything we do now, we're doing it on a camera. We're doing it on a camera. It's a computer. It's this little thing. And it's like, wow, it's really a big thing. So anyway, the World Wide Web is like a whole world where all the information that you put out into the world, into its world, it stays there. So you and I can be speaking in person. Everything that we say, unless it's recorded, is going to go away, or it's going to stay between you and I. But everything that you put on the internet, and the internet is just like a phone line. And whereas the phone lines ended somewhere and the communication stopped, once the receiver didn't pick up on the other end, that's not the way the computer works. That scares a lot of people. But let me tell you what, that's a good thing. It's a good thing because now when people try to covet, guess what? Adroit discoveries. That's right. You can't, because it's out there. Somebody's going to see it. That's why you should not have practiced coveting in the first place, because now it's easy to be seen. So like, for example, when the January 6th situation occurred, a lot of people were trying to blame the sheep who followed the information. Yeah, they have some accountability because they have free will, but those who led the sheep, because the sheep aren't knowing, they're working off of information that was given to them. It's the people who they tracked, the information was given from. So those people who were behind curtains once before, they're no longer behind the curtains. And the people who are the sheep or the followers or the subordinates to the idea, they're no longer the main person that's the fall guy. So it's more difficult to have a fall guy when all the information that is being put out in the open, regardless of whether you can see the camera or the dictaphone or whatever, you use these devices that block the signal, it's still the information is out there. So unless you're doing something that is hurting someone else or preventing the other person from excelling, you don't have anything to worry about. But if you're doing something that prevents someone else from advancing in any way, for example, if you covet their intellectual property, if you covet their, if you try to lie on them and say that they're doing something that they're not doing, it's all visible. And that's coming back on you. And you maybe in hindsight realize that you're a snake that started to devour itself unknowingly, because you were acting in a way that was actually against your own interest, and in trying to attack someone or hurt someone or covet someone. So when you did that, you weren't aware that information was going to get back, that you were the one that did that, because you don't understand the World Wide Web. That's on you. But even when you have an Apple device, they tell you, I saw the contract most recently. I was like, oh man, that's wild. They said update the device, or if you're still under contract or whatever, you can turn it back in to Apple, or and just don't use it. And I was like, wow, that's wow. When you become such a big company that you could tell people update or lose me, like, wow, that's a bad mama jamma. I'm just saying. I done seen some bad women in my time, and they was all of that in a bag of chips. That's how you spending your whole life trying to keep up with them. And that's what Apple is. It's like, man, wow, you really try hard to keep up with that. I can't say anything negative about it, because we all choose to financially invest in it, and we keep choosing to financially invest in it for whatever purpose it is. Even if we don't fully understand the World Wide Web, we're still investing in it and contributing to it. Now, originally, it was a far-fetched idea, because you mean to tell me we have to create everything in this real life world in a virtual world? And I don't even understand what a virtual world is. Like, where is all this stuff going to stick where you have a room, and in your mind, in this room, you can see the table. You can see the table is on the floor. The floor is holding it up. And you know a little bit enough about architecture that you understand there's beams and weight holding beams. There's all balancing this floor in order to put the type of weight on there that will sustain all the furniture you putting on there. And you also know that there's people who are paid to say, hey, this is outside of ordinance because you can't have this much weight in this room or whatever in this building, etc. But it was unthought of. You what are you talking about, this World Wide Web? So, and then people, their favorite line is, that's black magic, that's witchcraft, and all this other stuff, which also contributes to people avoiding advancement. That's a part of that fear my sister was talking about in the special prior to this show. So the World Wide Web was a idea that was like, man, that's too much for anybody to understand. So let's just focus on computers. And even that was too much for people to understand, because they see these, even though they see the physical manifestation of these little nodes that connect on this little green square, and then they see a bunch of them little green squares inside of the computer. They're like, man, I still don't understand how you're even making this little box and all these little gadgets you have there to communicate with another computer that's just like this one all over the world. How are you doing that? And then I get to explain and say, no, you leave all that smarty pants stuff alone. And there you have it. The reason why we don't really talk about the World Wide Web. And the reason why it's really difficult for a lot of people to understand the cloud, which is, you know, something that is continue to grow, which is branching off from what we call the World Wide Web. So it's a storage device. It's a storage. It's someplace where all of this information is going, but it's a physical location, because a lot of times you see we have a lot more information than we used to. Because now we have more people using these things, and all that information, like I said, is stored somewhere. It's like buying a bunch of food because it's the holiday and you trying to put all that food in your refrigerator. Your refrigerator didn't grow. It's only that little storage device. So you may buy some coolers and buy ice and put ice in the cooler in order to store the food until it's time to prepare the food for the big family gatherings during the holidays. Same thing with computers. You purchase little devices that store all this information. But guess what? We all know that that food came from somewhere else before it came to our house, before it went to the store. It came from somewhere, and people, they follow that easier because that's a part of farming, which is innate in our American experience, or just life period, because every country does that. Their foundation is farming. So they have a better foundational understanding of how that's going on, how you continue to build on that. But when it comes to computers, we don't know because it's scary. Nobody wants to think of, oh, if I put my information out here, that's going to be out there. So somebody turns on the camera, like my father had turned it on, say, yeah, or do something stupid or whatever, make faces and say and curse out or storm or whatever. And then he'll say, nah, that's on the internet. Now I'm there forever. No matter what happens, I'm still there. I'm still here. You still be able to find me. So yeah, it's still out there. That's how that works. But even if you're not necessarily looking for it directly, it's still out there. And a lot of times what we're seeing is people growing the World Wide Web, and they have no idea they're advancing it, because originally these computers were, people had to hire computer programmers who would sit there to no end typing ones and O's into the computer. And that was the computer language until Dr. Grace Hopper, who was a mathematician and a Commodore in the Navy, she came up with a numerical, she used a numerical code in order to write a machine language, which a lot of people call things like COBOL, and some other things that you probably don't even know what I'm saying anyway, but it's just smaller ways of saying a much bigger word that's really only relevant to computer world. So basically, Microsoft Office programs have this particular language that every student uses because that's primary to our understanding, and it's most easily to understand because it kind of works for you. And that's what the computer was supposed to do. So now that you have all these files, the computer files all of that away for you. So all you have to do is a few little typings and it'll bring up that file because it filed it for you. So you don't need somebody losing all your files because that's money and all that information, because you don't have to depend on the people anymore because the computer stored it all and it keeps it all. However, you do need somebody savvy enough to be able to use the computer in order to retrieve the information that you're looking for. And a lot of times people, they play around with the computer. They don't really know what they're doing. I do that a lot. My kids do that a lot. You're not going to know everything. So we play around with the computer and we find different things and we find, oh, I was able to do this by doing that. Now I found a new way to use the computer, and now I can see how other people have probably used this in order to do that very same thing. There's books out there like Hackers, and a lot of times people get the idea of hacking as a bad idea or a bad reputation. But the matter of the fact is, it's somebody who was playing around with the computer, who learned some stuff and know how to do some stuff, and now that's just what they do. It's it's a conditioned way of thinking, but a clever way, workaround to do the same thing that was not conditioned or trained thought. A collective group think. When you go to school, there's a collective group think where the instructor is teaching you how to do the fundamentals. And then when you play around with it a little bit, that's called hacking. Because a lot of times you're doing some things that you weren't exactly, it wasn't the goal. It wasn't the idea for you to do it, but you found some stuff out and now you working it. So a lot of people that do that, they're not afraid to play around with the computer, make mistakes, etc. Just like when, with anything else in the real world, we do things and we make mistakes. But one place that is always supposed to be safe for you to make mistakes is in school, which is why, some students get discovered in school. Some hackers get discovered in school because they were following the curriculum and the conditioned group think, but they were working around with some things and they were like, man, I found another way to do it. And even though I don't condone the saying it's more than one way to skin a cat, that's pretty much what it is with a computer. It's multiple ways of accomplishing the same goal. And a lot of times we're not conditioned to do it but one way. For example, you see how Apple has computer software programs, and Hewlett Packard has another way of their software. Both computers do the same things. However, it's a different way that they both do the same thing. So there's that. So we talk a lot about computers, but we don't talk enough about the World Wide Web, maybe because, it scares a lot of people, and some people it just excites. I happen to be in the middle of both of those. I don't really want to learn too much, and I don't really want to not know and be left out of the loop. So I'm kind of in the middle right there, and I kind of stay there. And that's why I record everything when I'm learning, because I'm like, this sounds important. I'm not listening right now. And I push play. I try to start recording because that's just the way I think. I don't know about you, but that's just me. A lot of people kind of try to warm up to the idea by facing their fear. Like you saw movies about Skynet, and how the people were like using different ability for you to understand the positives about using something like the World Wide Web and abusing it. So there's always both ends of the fence. So there's this part of the fence where people are like, oh, it excites me, I want to know more. And then there's the other side of the fence where it's like, nah, I really don't want to know. I know as much as I got to, and then I'm gonna leave it alone. But then the people that's excited about it, they're like, well, man, I'm gonna try to see what else I can learn. And then in the middle between them is a gatekeeper. And that gatekeeper can be either a teacher, instructor, or the government, which puts restrictions on you to say how much you can and cannot know, or can and cannot experiment with, what's legal and illegal. Because I remember there was a time where somebody may accidentally tap into somebody else's camera, and it's like, how did you get here? Who is this? Why are you here? You know how sometimes you have a problem with your computer, and it's like, wow, I need to call tech support. And tech support says, okay, let me take control of your computer. And they don't know how tech savvy you are, because they didn't ask you. They just asked if they can take control in order to fix your problem. And you're like, okay, go ahead. So that's what I did. I called tech support one day and I said, I need help with something. And they said, let me take control of your computer to go really fast and you could be about your way. And I'm like, okay, because I had time. I had papers to write. I had to do time. I'm like, man, and plus on top of being a student, I had other stuff I had to do. So I'm balancing too much. I go ahead and accept this help. And as I'm looking at them go through the files or whatever, they access the camera. You shouldn't be accessing my camera, and there's certain files you shouldn't be even in. You should just go right to the hardware and figure out, well, the software, and figure out what's wrong with the program and fix the thing I'm asking you to fix. But they didn't know I was watching, with an understanding, that is. So anyway, from seeing that, we can see how people can abuse their authority and hack into things that they shouldn't be hacking into, to include, they could be copying your information. You know how you go to the store? Everybody goes to the store, even if it's a fast food restaurant, and you give the person your card, and you don't know that that device has copied your information, your card information, and the person is going to use it later until it became a really big scam. And then you're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be more vigilant now. I don't want people to take my money, especially around the holiday seasons where spending is more likely to happen, you know, all the time and in different area codes, despite the area code you live in. So there's that. So when we see these kind of discoveries of how people abuse their authority, it's because we're being vigilant and we're not being afraid and having that fear to restrain our understanding and our seeking more knowledge. Whereas sometimes we do allow the fear and being afraid to handicap us from excelling in the way that's more profitable. But, you know, we live and we learn, we see that's a mistake and we grow from it. So it's okay. Some people can be afraid of the World Wide Web. Some people can be afraid of the cloud. Some people can be afraid of the computer and laptop and cell phones. And some people, I'm an Android lover. I love Android, but I have an Apple. But I love my Android and I still have my Androids, and they are phenomenal because they allow freedom of thought as opposed to restricting me to just what the Apple would allow me to do. So I work offline a lot because working offline is a freedom where I don't have to put all my information on the World Wide Web. I understand what that's doing. And I'm one of those type of people that's in the middle, you know, people who's like, well, I'm not putting all my information out there for the government to catch me or find me or all that BS or whatever. And then you have the people that say, well, I don't care. They can know anything. I don't even put, you know, I even undress in front of the camera. I don't care. And I do everything else in front of the camera. They love voyeurism for some reason. I don't know. I don't know if that's it or if they just don't care, or they're just afraid and they're doing whatever they can to get over the fear. We all do things differently and for different reasons. I don't judge, but I watch and I kind of get entertained by it because I'm like, man, that was clever. I never would have thought of that. Man, that was a different way of thinking. That was a different way of seeing that. That was clever. I'm intrigued by, you know, adroit living. People doing clever things. It amazes me because a lot of times I see people conditioned to think, behave, and respond. And when I see them doing things outside of that conditioning, it's like, wow, that's exciting. Are they aware that they did that? And then you point it out to them, and they're like, wow, I didn't even realize that. And then it's like, wow, you should keep that up. Keep sharpening that, because you might end up, advancing something that other people did not know, and that can become the norm. And the possibility of that really excites me. So I always encourage people to do that. Okay, so I had notes here that would help me talk about the World Wide Web, because there's so many things about it that it's like, wow, what do I say? But the World Wide Web is not something to fear, especially if you're not doing anything that will harm others. So any information that you put out there, if it's not hurting anybody in a way that is preventing them from excelling or not giving them credit for what they've done, what are you afraid of? Just like you live in your home and the windows are open because you want the sunlight or you want a breeze. Don't be afraid to open the window. You're not doing anything. This your space, this your house. And what you're doing may actually help somebody else. I remember driving, my husband was stationed in Colorado, and we were, looking around for housing and everything, and something close to the base, because we also wanted to be, somewhere where the hospital was, because I was pregnant. And then we were driving through Colorado looking for a place, and somebody, had the window open. It was like the patio door window, and the curtains weren't drawn, and they're like in front of the patio window with no cover, and they're doing things completely wilding out in their birthday suit. And as I'm driving, it just so happened to catch my eye, because like I said, we was looking for a place to stay, and trying to figure out the pros and cons of different areas, to include what floor we want to be on. And that's when we discovered we don't want to be on the first floor, because if you're on the second floor, it's at least at that angle you can't see anything. But even on the second floor, the neighbors heard and saw too much. I'm just saying, because we was on the second floor and I didn't know. I thought I was safe, but it is what it is. I was married, so you couldn't really see anything. But I'm just saying, when you're married, It's stuff that's gonna happen. People need not be nosy. And like I said, I was just driving by. I didn't stop watching, eat popcorn or anything. I'm just saying. However, if you're doing things that will, harm others, I can understand that you're afraid that, I know, right, Tony? I'm not a voyeur. I promise you I'm not a voyeur. And I'm certainly not trying to give, something that ain't pay-per-view for free. So, well, I'm not trying to give something that's pay-per-view for free. But anyway, it's like we don't know what we don't know. And when we learn, it was a mistake, but we grew from it, so we knew, don't be on the first floor. But it's like people will watch you regardless. You know how you be in the skyscraper? My mom stayed in like Lakeview, I think it was. And it was one of them skyrise apartment buildings. And you know how all those went in Chicago. And it's these windows, nice windows. And it's a really nice view, because it's like a view of downtown Chicago and all the lake and all that really wonderful stuff. And you got Navy Pier and stuff like that you can see through your window from your apartment. But what you don't know is people, like the peep shows, they'll get some binoculars and they'll be looking up at your window at you, and you don't even know it, but you feel safe and comfortable enough to do, things that you might not do if you knew people were watching. But with the World Wide Web, it seems like everybody wants to be, seen or heard in some way, because some part of their life they're not being seen, they're not being heard, and they're not being properly serviced, and it is messing up their mental well-being. It's throwing off their mental balance, where it's causing the world a major problem, because it's crashing the economy. one of the major reasons why I love the military and their advocacy for education is because they understand that without that advocacy, without that strength building, the American dollar will continue to be weak and grow even weaker. Meanwhile, we're sitting there as a collective Americans being upset because we're buying foreign aid, we're supplying foreign aid because we're buying their friendship, we're buying their allowance, their allies, and whatever, so that we can sustain ourselves. Meanwhile, we're holding back our main teammate that's advancing us because of normatives that divide. Whereas the military is like, well, it's collective. It's a collective of people who come from different communities that get together in the military, despite where they were born and raised, and in the different cultures they were born and raised in, and the stereotypes that they were born with. They go into the military, and it's a melting pot. And in that melting pot, everybody comes to learn that the people that you are with, they're going to save your life via teamwork. Now, the greatest thing America ever came to understand was the way forward is teamwork. Our forefathers realized that, and they created some writings and scribes that we don't really adhere to as Americans as a whole. So when we look at the government and we say things like, oh, the government's paying all this money to foreigners and we left out. No, it wasn't that. What it was that you didn't understand that we're not investing because we're busy coveting the teammates, because there's a diversity that we don't want to embrace, because there's fears that we don't want to put aside, and we don't want to act in a positive way despite our fears, in order to overcome our fears, to understand that those conditioned ways we were thinking was really our biggest barrier that was holding us back from this great thing we call teamwork that has advanced the world historically for centuries. For example, I know I talked a lot about Einstein. Einstein was German. Did you know that? But Americans talk about him, and they use his level of education and understanding as a standard elite level of education. And it's like, at the same time, they turn around and they're mad about immigrants. They don't want to support immigrants and immigrant learning. And then you have people who were, of course, America, all of them are immigrants, except for the Native Americans who were here before everybody started migrating over here. But I know I'm not trying to get that deep, but I'm just saying, we have African Americans who are literally the melting pot of all of these immigrants that came over to America, but we still don't invest in African Americans' ability to progress, as opposed to narrowing their way as much as we possibly can, which in turn turns the people who are blocking, it turns them into a snake that's actually devouring itself, because they don't realize until it's too late that every action that they were doing against you is actually hurting you. So at the end of the day, when you completely devour yourself, who's going to be left there? It's going to be those foreigners that you paid all that money to, and they're going to come over and they're going to say, hey, you're an undervalued asset. We see your potential. Join us, because there's nothing left anyway. And that's what's going to happen. They're going to join because there's nothing left anyway. But if America realizes it, and they will, because it's a digital age, when they realize it, it's going to stop the ability for the American dollar to continue to decline, and it's going to get stronger again. For example, we're losing the space race as Americans because we are hindering one another. And I know a lot of viewers have already seen Hidden Figures. Hidden Figures was a movie that did expose a lot of the ways that we hinder our greatest American assets because we're so divided against one another. However, there's some people who are not, of the same culture, but they have the leadership and the understanding and the wisdom and the opportunity to exercise those things in order to turn things around for the greater good of America. So it's not just about a particular culture of America, but America as a whole, because without the whole, we are still divided. And the United States of America, divided against itself, you're like a snake that's devouring yourself. And what can you do after that? A snake that devours itself is turned into itself. So it's defenseless against attackers. And it can't eat anything else. So it kind of has no more opportunities there. So it continues to eat itself because it's hungry. And it's going to keep eating because it may not realize, it may not have the brain capacity to say, hey, let's not do this. And a lot of times when you have, you're going through life and you have Jimmy the Cricket on your shoulder and you have an angel on the left side and you have an angel on the right side and you got a demon on the left side and you're Jimmy the Cricket on the shoulder trying to tell you, hey, go this way and go that way and reasons why you should pick either side. And you're like, well, man, it seems like it seems a desirable thing to do the left because, man, that seems far more entertaining. Actually, both sides have the same barriers blocking the way forward. However, it's not until you're in it where you really start to see. So on the right side, you have your right mind where you're exercising wisdom and advancing as a whole, physically, mentally, spiritually, etc. And over here on the left, you have, well, this is entertaining, this is profitable, and a lot of people are already over here, so it's popular. I think I want to go this route. I'm going to go this route. This looks like, wow. And then there's a lot of distractors for, hey, you fail, curse somebody out, and keep moving. But on this side, you're like, man, you mean tell me I can't curse nobody out and still be thought of being considered to be doing the right thing and going the right way? Nah, I can't go that way. I'm going this way. I'm going this way. So you go this way. These sides are parallel because it's the same gate connected by one fence. It's the same fence connected by the one gate, the gatekeeper. And again, the gatekeeper, it can be the person who narrows the way forward. We'll call it that. So as this person continues to progress and this person continues to progress, they're watching each other. And this person is giving up a bit of a free will because as you continue to follow conditioned thinking, you have to follow conditioned thinking. And that path is not as liberal and has as many opportunities and paths a way forward as the one that doesn't condition your thinking, where you're free to exercise your free will because you're not following conditioned thinking. Whereas over here, you want to stay popular. You want to stay, in the clique. You want to make sure that you stand in the good graces of those who are helping you to progress forward. Whereas over here, you realize, I'm helping you. You're going to advance. You're going to advance. You praying your way through. You fasting, consecrating, doing whatever you got to do to make your way through. And this person over here is like, well, I got to do whatever they want me to do because if I don't do what they want me to do, they're not going to let me advance. But they got this position that's ready for me. And if I do this one thing, then they'll let me go ahead into that position. Whereas this person is like, man, that person isn't going to let me advance. But there's another way. Maybe I could go that route. But this person doesn't see any other route because that conditioned thinking and the relinquish of free will. So as that person continues to follow that path, they don't realize that there's other ways, there's other options and opportunities, but they look over to the right and they see this person has so many ways and paths and jumping around, making decisions and paving paths that have never been trailed before. And they're advancing, and it may be at a slower rate than this person, but at some point, this person doesn't realize it, they don't see it because this route people are not going to let you advance above them. So you have to realize that there's a stopgap there, whereas this person is going to keep on going and eventually pass you up because you stuck in this one place. And you may not know that that person who was helping you to advance coveted the information that they have for advancement. So now that this person is continuing to move forward, you and them are stuck, stagnant, and now irrelevant, because time moves so fast that you can quickly become irrelevant. So the computers that you're using, they're advancing all of these particular paths and opportunities for you to excel and keep on moving forward in more than one way than the person who is saying, well, I'm only going to know this much. I'm only going to do this much. So you never see all those other paths. You never see, oh, there's an update. Let me go ahead and get that update, because now with that update, there's a more advancement there, and there's other opportunities that you would not have seen if you stayed stagnant into conditioned thinking. So that's why a lot of people don't know about the World Wide Web, because they didn't invest in knowing. And now that they have to learn about the cloud, I think it'll probably lead more to the understanding of the World Wide Web and the world that it created, this virtual reality. And a lot of people who are really in it already, because updates happen so fast every 3 months. And gamers are like the only ones that's like really, really that deep into it. Gamers and sci-fi people, because they want to apply the knowledge that they have and see it work right in front of them, not just, hear about it unfolding. So gamers are already putting it to work, putting these ideas to work, and stretching out and growing that world, expanding that world, because all the information that those computer programmers were typing in in order to build this world is now everybody is feeding into it, and they don't even know it, because every time you use AI, you use these devices like Siri, etc. I'm going to only stick with that. But all the other ones, because if I say their name, they're going to start talking, and I don't want them to say nothing. So anyway, you want to use those products because they're fun, they're exciting, they're easy to use. But in your usage, you are actually building more paths, even though it's a conditioned way of using it, because it restrains your ability to venture off into other parts using that same device. Whereas over here, if you're not only using that device that's particular to a conditioned thinking, but you're using other ones, and you say, well, man, I have all those AIs. Let me make them interact and see what that does. But some people are like, well, no, I don't want to see. I don't want to know. I'm just going to do this because this is all I want to work with. And I only want to work with for a limited time. So you're narrowing your own way at the same time of the gatekeeper narrowing your way as well. So when we have the World Wide Web and we discover, we play around with it, we find a whole lot more information than we were ever conditioned to know, let alone know how to use. Make mistakes and things like that. In some movies, I used to love those movies where they talked about computers and how a kid was using a computer and accidentally tapped into military, computers and fought some battles or whatever, or space. A kid was using a video game and they had no idea that they were actually fighting a real war. And it's like, thoughts like that are very intriguing. And I wonder if it's even possible. But in the real world, we call that hacking, and it's discouraged. People don't want you playing around with computers. And then there's back doors, because there's, the front door you can't get through, right? But then there's a back door with computers where some people aren't aware that even though you have a computer, there's another way in. There's always another way, because all the computers, it's about to be scary again, all computers and their devices are connected, and there's a way in. So Yeah, I'm one of those people that's paranoid. I keep my cameras covered. I unplug things. I take batteries out of stuff. I'm like, yeah, things I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to be heard or seen or whatever. I take the measurements in order to prevent that. But there's some things that's in there that you don't know about that does, keep it alive or whatever. It is well known. But by the time they put it in a movie or they put it in a book, it's already a loophole. By the time a law becomes, I know I said this before, but by the time a law becomes a law, there's already loopholes in order for people to circumvent the law, to move around it, to avoid it, to not adhere to it. So there's that. And then people say, well, okay, well, I'll just pay the penalty, because they can afford to pay the penalty, because it was designed that only certain people would be able to pay the penalty and still be able to ignore the rule. And it's no harm, no foul to them, because they got the money to waste. So that's another way that people are limited. Their path is narrowed, to the path forward is narrowed in that manner. But again, like I said, I stumble over, words, and I jump back and forth because this camera really messes with my head. But again, wait for the book. It won't be long. So if you found that the special was informative, and if you like having information that is, maybe not as just as entertaining, but actually advances you financially, then please continue to donate. There is a time limit. If you donate up to $50,000 by Christmas, then I will divulge information that will help you tap into not global, but generational wealth. So again, there's the ticker tape down at the bottom that you can use to donate. What is it? Let me see. I don't remember. I gotta wait for it to come around. The Cash App at $ the Adroit. Erudition Network. ERUDITION Network. All one word. The Erudition Network. I don't know why I said that, but I was looking at the whole word down at the bottom at the same time. I told you, I'm human. I'm flawed just like everybody else. Stop looking at me like, you surprised. I got flesh, you got flesh. So don't be looking at me like that. I got bare hair days. I got bare hair days. You got bare hair days. And, all that other stuff in between. I'm blessed to do the things that I do, but that doesn't mean that God allows me to be flawless, infallible. So, we all got that. Anyway, I do these shows to help with mental health, because we don't necessarily always readily make the connection between these things that we're enduring, these decisions that we got to make, and the life that we're living. We don't necessarily make the connection between how that is impacting our mental well-being, how that's causing us to make particular decisions and causing us to feel some type of way, as people say. But what I say is, professionally, it causes us to endure an emotional roller coaster where we're sitting there going through various emotions really fast, extremely rapidly, without sound reason, logic, illogically, going through a bunch of emotions rather rapidly, and we're not necessarily aware of it. So we say things like feeling some type of way because we don't have another way to convey the words that's actually happening. And a lot of times, we do things and we don't even know what the title of it is. We don't even know what the word of it is. We know the definition because we're doing it, but we don't know what the elite word is, or the $10 word is, or whatever. So, it doesn't stop the fact that you need the help. And it's not stopping the fact that your mental well-being is not as sound as it should or could be. So I do these videos in order to help improve that. So hopefully that has been helpful. Anyway, that's been my show for today. Hopefully you also catch the special. It is on YouTube and on Facebook and other streaming other social media platforms. So I hope you look for that. And remember, ring the bell so you'll get notifications for when I'm on. And see you next episode. Remember, mental health is physical wealth.
Mental health is physical wealth.